All right, how many of you guys fish tidal water? Pretty much all of you. Okay, so we're talking the upper bay. Show of hands, most of you guys. Upper bay. So
Nanaco.
Okay, okay. Well, I would say, you know, as far as tide goes, I mean, anything I fish, I'd say the Delaware is probably the most extreme. So if you guys haven't fished the Delaware, I mean, it's quite a difference. Pretty much all of you guys fish the upper bay. I would say out of any tidal system I ever fished, the upper bay is the easiest. And that has to do with because the fluctuation of tide, in my opinion, is just so small. Your windows of opportunity are huge because you have so the first thing we're going to go over is understanding the tides. Okay, what makes the tides go up and down? Does anybody know? Moon. What else?
Wind.
What's that?
Wind.
That doesn't make you go up and down, but that's part of it. Yeah. Up and down. Anybody else?
Rotation.
Yes, it's part of the rotation. Rotation from what?
The Earth.
You said the moon already. The Earth. One more.
Right.
The sun. There you go. So the moon has actually 2 times the power of the pull on the gravity on the tides over the sun and over the Earth, which is quite. We've all seen tide charts, correct? Everybody's seen tide charts? Okay, so your average tide chart, I'm just gonna, I can't draw, but something like that, okay? And pretty much the average tide swing in our area is like 12 hours and 25 minutes on average for, you know, high, low, average. Water, that I can tell you is the #1 thing to figure out is actually knowing what your tide is on your spots. That's hands down the easiest thing. Once you figure it out, that's exactly, you know, how you win tournaments on the upper bay. True. Tides are 10 times easier than fishing lakes. You know, you've seen all these guys in the elites. You know, last year or 2 years ago, they came to the Delaware. Pretty much the whole entire field struggled because in their head, you know, oh, it's tidal. I can't fish this. And a lot of guys think that way. That's so not true. The one good thing about tidal water, it brings the fish to you if you can figure out where they're going to set up at. Okay, how many of you guys use the tide station on your Lowrance or Garmin or whatever? 1, 2. Okay, that tide station thing on your Navionics is unbelievably crucial. How many of you guys don't know what it is? Okay. And I'm gonna draw you a picture of what exactly it is. Okay, so if any of you guys and there'll be an arrow, yeah, tide station on your Lowrance. It'll say 2.7, you know, until low tide, which at the very low would be the mean of the tide in the lowest part. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is, if I know that a dock in this certain area is really good at 2.7, boom, it's automatically going to put me on that spot. You can pretty much lay out, like literally, completely your whole entire day. Like if you're running the Northeast, for example, I can do an 8-hour day in the Northeast River, and I'm hitting these docks. So like I said a little bit ago, the upper bay tide swing is really small, you know, as far as like where it goes out, and you got all the time in the world. So your windows of opportunity on the upper bay are very, very high because, you know, a section of that dock will be in really good water for, let's say, longer than 20 minutes, what it would be on most rivers. You know, Delaware, you have like 10-minute windows, which is very tiny. You know, you got to figure out how to run to the spot from spot to spot. That's primarily how I lay out my day as far as, you know, running the tides with the tide chart and tide station. Now, the hard part is finding these docks that you can, you know, put into your schedule throughout the day. That's the hard part. That's where it takes work. I mean, I will say this about any tidal water I've ever fished: 1.7 feet of water is the magic number. 1.7. So if you know it to low or coming in.
So the last 2 hours of the outgoing,
pretty much is what it is. But even in the grass, on the flat, that 1.7 is the magic number.
All right, cool. So what you're saying is if you're on...
What I'm trying to say is, let's say that 2.7 at this dock over here on my graph, that water is around 1.6, 1.7, 1.8. That 1.7 it's crazy how it works out, but every river I've ever fished, it's just happened so many times over and over that I know that that's actually the number in rivers that fish relate to more than any number I've ever fished. It's just one of them things. And that's not something you read about, that's just something I learned on my own. You know, through hard work with fishing all these docks at all different tides, if you can figure out, and don't get me wrong, there is, and I'll show you an example, there is docks that I can ride down, I can go down any river system, I can never be there in my life, I can ride down it, I'm like, oh, that area over there is probably pretty good. Just because I've seen it so many times, and I'll draw you a little picture of, you know, what I look for if I'm going to a new river. And I'll tell you, that's one good thing about tidal water is, if you did have a dock, okay, so tidal fish tend to stay like, you know, I hardly catch them. I mean, I've caught tidal fish in 30 feet of water, it's pretty deep. You hardly catch an average tidal fish deeper than 5 feet of water. It's always like the 1'7" zone, that's always where it seems to be. But if you have a dock that's laid out to where it can take the whole entire tide swing, you know, high to low, you can literally sit on that dock the entire event. And I'm sure some of you have done this before in certain areas. If it's a tree, a dock, or whatever it is, riprap, you know, you can sit on that dock and let the tide bring the fish in, let the tide scoop the fish back out to you. It's that simple. So when you think about tidal water, it's not hard. It's just figuring out the spots where they're relating to through the course of the day. That's generally what it is.
So that number there, that 2.7 is feet to low or time hours to low?
It's feet to
the range.
It's feet to the low. It's from the middle to the low, going down.
So that's saying that's a
2.7 feet. Yes, exactly. Yep. So and on like you get the Navionics, it'll have an arrow. It's either red or green. You know, green down, red up. It shows you like to the T. I can't stress how important that is. And I've never read this in any magazine because I don't think they want you to know about it. But that's what it's there for. That's
like
why 1.7. It might not be 1.7 here, but the dock or whatever I'm fishing is going to be in 1'7". You know, 1'7". That's that much water. That's plenty of water for a feeding fish. You know, so when your tide comes in on any tidal body of water, what's it doing? It's pushing whatever's coming in with that current right up to the cover or to the structure, you know, and once it starts to recede, that's when the feeding usually happens on rivers. The upper bay, the upper bay is almost like a lake a little bit because them fish feed incoming, outgoing, doesn't matter, you know, slack tide. Like the James River, I have never once in my life caught a fish on incoming tide on the James River, which is crazy because on the James, you know, let's say you're launching out of the Osborne way up top, and you have an incoming tide, the entire field is going to run down to Chickahominy to try to get the first part of the outgoing tide that's going to happen. Because the fish just do not eat. It's pretty mind-blowing. The Delaware's like that a little bit too. Delaware just has so much cover to hide, and that's why the fish are a little harder to catch there. So, you know, talking about that, let's talk about running tides. So let's say you're fishing northeast, and you know, 7 o'clock in the morning is 1 hour to high tide, okay? But if you think in your head, well, you know what, the tide's coming from the south, so it's going to go out first in the south, correct? Okay, so I'm like, you know what, I'm going to run down to the Sassafras in the morning, run down there, try to run the outgoing tides, and later in the day, your better bite is going to be, you know, from when you left the Sass to get back to the northeast, because you didn't waste an hour on your average tide, you know, letting it just come in and just get flattened out and do nothing. That tide's not moving real good. The fish just don't eat as well. They're just not as active because the bait's not being pushed around. None of that stuff's happening. You know, every fish, lake, river, impoundment, whatever, they like some kind of current in their face. They just like it. So, you know, just always keep that in mind, that if you were to, you know, get a bad tide in the northern part you're fishing, you can always run south and try to get away from it. You understand what I'm saying? Anybody questions on that? Anybody good on that? Okay. So let's say, like I said a little bit ago, I can ride down pretty much any river, and I can be like, you know what, this is a high percentage area right here. So I'll try to, I'm gonna give you an actual dock on the Northeast River that is probably one of my better, you know, it's top 95%. let me think how to explain this. Does everybody know where McDaniel's is? Okay, so you come out of no wake zone, you know, you got all your little tiny rip-rap things on the left-hand side. Just as you're like getting past on the rip-rap, there's a sharp point that comes around and it wraps around the side. Everybody follow me? On the left-hand side is going out? Okay. Well, it's pretty much like this. It comes down, and then it goes over. Here's McDaniel's over here. Here's like all the tiny rip-rap things coming in like this, like this. Well, there's a dock positioned right here.
In that cove.
Exactly. That is one of my biggest fish docks on the whole entire bay.
Oh, you had to go and tell them.
It's not there anymore.
It actually fell down yesterday, but I don't mean it. I'm not trying to give up any secrets, but that's, if you guys fish here a lot, that's the best way for me to give you a really good example. And I'll tell you why that dock is so good. That dock has water on it at every part of the tide. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You know, at high tide, the fish might be positioned back here because that's real close to that 1.7 I'm telling you about. And I'll tell you what, at dead low tide, that dock's 1.7 at the very end. That's exactly what it is. So that's what I'm trying to tell you. You can pretty much go to any river system now that you know what I just told you, and you can be like, oh, I can see the tide is exactly. You can ride your bait by it without even throwing a cast and see what the water is on it. And if there's a brush pile or grass on it, 10 times better. You know, that's what I'm trying to tell you. But the way this dock sets up, so when you get that water starting to wash out of the northeast, where's all the bait going? Getting funneled right into that dock. So they're the kind of docks you're looking for. I mean, it doesn't have to be, it can be riprap. Like all these little ripraps, everybody knows community hole. They're really good. For what reason? Everything's being washed out of the upper northeast and it's being poured back in there. Plus the release fish. You know, that's a big bonus. If you ever have an area like the northeast, like the Osborne and the James, it's the same deal. But then fish seem to spread a lot more. The current's a lot stronger there. But that's what you want to look for. I'm sure all of you probably fish the flat, right? Correct? Okay. So, you know, vast area. If I had to give you one point in time to go out to the flat and fish, if it's like you're trying to practice for a tournament or you're trying to do anything, I would say 1 hour to low tide. Because most of the fish on the higher tides will go deeper into the grass, receive the shallower areas, but on that 1 foot to down the low, you know, you're going to get about 2-3 hours of good tide there because all the fish on the flat are going to get washed out to the outside lines of anything that's around the area. You understand what I'm saying? So, I'll tell you a question I get asked a lot is, well, how do you locate them once you find them in the grass? Like, how do you figure out what your pattern is for the day? And this is actually a pretty cool little deal. So every time I get a bite in the grass, if I'm cracking, it could be anywhere. I mean, I could be on Cayuga, fishing the grass. It doesn't matter. So this is what I usually do. Let's just say all this is the entire flat. Okay? Every time I get a bite, I put a waypoint on it. So let's say a waypoint here, a waypoint here, a waypoint here, a waypoint here, a waypoint here. Zoom your graph way out, and what do you see? You see a cluster. You know, that right there, I mean, that tells you there's a good population of fish right there. Something special is holding them fish. So that's how I distinguish where, when I practice for a tournament, that's usually how I do it. By zooming the graph out. One thing, you know, this is giving up a little bit of secret, and maybe if you guys know this, I'm sorry that I'm going to say this, but it's something, especially on river systems, that's going to help you out. We've all heard of like throwing crankbaits, you know, banging them off the cover and doing all that good stuff. Yeah, well, the crankbait, and I don't know what crankbait you guys throw. There's one crankbait on the upper bay that I throw religiously. It's a chartreuse blackback 1.5 from Spoken. Hands down, the best crankbait on the bay. There's a huge population of yellow perch on the upper bay. In the water, that looks just like a yellow perch. I mean, it glows yellow when you put it in the water. That's exactly what they want. So I would say I win most of my tournaments in September. The way that I do it is I have an 8-0-1 reel, and I throw that 1.5, and I swear I bang that thing off of the cover as fast as I possibly can reel. Sometimes I'll throw 10 times on the one piece, and boom, I got him. I mean, it does this so many times, but I do lose a lot of fish. It's the same deal. All right, so let's say you're playing baseball as a kid, and you turn around from each other's ball, and what are you going to do? Right away, you're going to try to, you know, deflect it. Fish don't have arms; they have a mouth. That's the same thing they do. I mean, they're gonna bite. That's all there is to it. If you keep it going in there, you're going to annoy it enough times, and one of them times, you will get that reaction going out. I mean, it's crazy. There's so many tournaments in September that I fish on the bay that I'm catching 30 to 40 fish every single trip on the bay. They're there. Every spot that I hit, I know there's a fish there, if not 10. Like, that's the truth. If you have a tournament, where do you drop your fish off at? Anchor Marine. So think about the number of fish.
Every weekend.
You can literally, I'll tell you, you know, if I'm turning on Saturday, Sunday, I ain't leaving Everett Park. I'm staying right there. Why would I leave? I mean, guys get on your catching retreads, ABC fish already been caught, but who cares? It's still going to weigh the same way, right? So, you know, banging that crankbait is pretty crazy. Now, on the other scheme of things, let's talk about, in my opinion, any river, but especially on the upper bay. What is the most versatile? Now somebody said worm, okay?
That was me. You
But
didn't say nothing, so I didn't say
because
something.
you didn't say the right thing. Drop shot. I would say 90% on drop shot. I mean,
on the docks and stuff.
on the docks, the riprap. I'll follow anybody. I don't care who hit that dock, because they're all throwing a jig. They're all throwing jigs. Everybody.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, yeah, he's on the dock. I'll just wait till he leaves, and I go in there, got him, put him in the box. And they usually bite that the first initial fall every time for me. Now, there is a certain worm that I throw that I'm not going to say, because I think it is that special. But I will tell you this. So, a drop shot on a river system pretty much simplifies a drop shot, because, you know, when you throw a drop shot in current, it automatically goes. I mean, you really don't have to do much work. Most of the time for me with a drop shot, I throw it in on the bay. I'll hold it, go down, I'll hold it, it's got it, it's already got it, yes.
Cast it out or drop it down?
I'm actually-
And how far do you cast it?
As normally as you will with a jig, I can actually,
okay.
yeah, I can pitch it just as good as I can pitch a jig.
Okay, so you,
Are you doing something different than a standard color?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it's kind of a special color. They sell it here, but okay.
Up in the Northeast.
That's-
Or on
that's-
the upper bay.
That's a good question. Okay, so he asked, you know, leader length, right?
Yeah, leader length.
Yeah, he asked
Leader
what kind of
weight.
leader length that I use on my drop shot. I have 2 drop shot rods on my deck when I fish upper bay. One with a real small leader, one with a normal size. High tide, low tide. Medium tide down, little one. Medium tide up, the longer one. Just because it probably doesn't matter, but to me, I guess it's just how I do it, you know? Because a tidal fish is an opportunity just to the fullest. I mean, if they see a meal, they 9 times out of 10 are
So
gonna
you
eat it.
have to use it, and now it's dirty water. I'm guessing that the line weight's not that big of a deal.
I go braid to fluoro. You know, I go anywhere from 10 to 12 pound test.
Not necessarily go 6 pound like up north.
Nah, you don't have to. I mean, them seeing 12 pound tests to them, it's
That
like
don't matter.
us winning the lottery. They're not used to seeing that. They see a 65 pound braid falling there. What's that? You know, it's I've never fished anywhere in the world besides Lake St. Clair that the fish are just so stupid. You know, because literally, I've seen guys throw fish back as I'm like working up to a dock, and I throw in there. This fish just got caught. It's got blood dripping out of his mouth. You know what I'm saying?
Up the bay.
Yeah, in the upper bay. It's just amazing.
How about weight on the tidal water with the
3/8.
drop shot? 3/8, okay.
Always 3/8, 9 times out of 10, unless it's like stupid windy.
Right.
But if you guys don't drop shot in the upper bay or any river system, you need to. I mean, I can't stress how important it is.
3/8 ounce.
3/8 ounce, yes. You know, just a normal leader. What's that? Oh, okay, yeah. Just a normal leader most of the time, like I said, for a high tide, a little longer. Low tide, shorter. Yeah, the fish are going to bottom a little more at lower water. I will say this about my drop shot worm, and I think that all right, I'm going to give you a hint. Don't call it out because you're probably going to get it. It's a hand poured bait. Okay, I'm saying that. But one thing that I will say, if you're going to shaky head or drop shot, you want to buy a drop shot worm that's got a real flat side on one side of it, because is what that does. It might seem small and minute, but it does make a difference a lot of times, especially for smallmouth. You know, a drop shot bait that has like more of a slender side to it, it's going to glide a lot better going down versus a round one that just pretty much falls. And hand poured, you know, the buoyancy's a lot better on it. so the action on it's going to be 10 times better. Use that fishing anywhere as you fish. You know, try to go for hand cord whenever you can. It makes that much of a difference.
Spinning rod, right?
Spinning rod. Usually like 15-pound braid to a 10-pound. I just use the braid, you know, my leader as far as like, not the leader from the drop shot to the weight, but the actual leader itself. I usually go like 6-7 feet, you know, just for retie reasons. But there is a lot of barnacles and all that good stuff down there. So I do break off sometimes, but most of the time I position the boat to where, you know, I can flip it in there or just rip and wear it out. I put the drag tight and just flip and pull. You know, I don't lay off them at all.
Usually open hook.
Yes, usually a number 2 owner hook. That's usually the one I use. Yes.
And you know, get hung up or anything from a long cast?
Well, I mean, I do get hung up sometimes, but most of the time, no. I would say it's a lot less than flipping a jig, you know.
Do you mostly cast long, medium, or?
No, I pitch it. I can use with the jig or the drop shot.
A drop shot, I mean, you know, just.
I pitch it. I pitch it like I would cast a jig under a dock. I mean, I'm pretty good at casting. You know, I can pretty much bring it in pretty good. That's another thing too. Or two that they're the spawn, because they're going to eat if something falls in their bed. You know, jig wise, I mean, I do use riot baits as far as they have a fuzzy beaver. It's the same as you know, a screw beaver. It's a little more pendulums to it. Jig wise, I would say around, I would say ½ ounce, you know, or heavier. The Hack Attack jig is probably my favorite. Black blue on the flats. Yeah, I mean, I literally cast it out. I mean, I might work it a tiny bit. I never work it back to the boat because a lot of times they really do bite on that initial fall going through the grass.
Do you ever do any good, or do you ever drop shot up around Garrett Island and stuff up in the rocks? Do you ever really go up there a smallmouth drop shot?
I have. There's one.
Do you use an Albright or what not to use?
I use the advanced Albright. I always do fluorocarbon to braid. It's the advanced Albright. If anybody wants to see how to tie it, I can show you afterwards. The reason it's called the Alberto or the advanced Albright. There's 2 names for it. But if anybody wants to see it, I can show it to you, and I'll tell you why it's so good. You know, when you do a double uni, it's like 2 fists put together. And if you use anything in micro guides, that's not really what you want to use. So the advanced Albright actually lays like this. And the other advantage to it is when you do it, you make a loop in the fluorocarbon and you wrap the braid all the way around it. So the knot is never exposed because the braid is wrapped around the knot. It's a really good knot. And I think it's what Aaron Martin throws. And you know, if he's throwing it, it's got to be good because he doesn't do anything that's like bad at all, I feel like. So I've been throwing a cast. So I kind of know what to look for. Now with the Delaware and the James River, so the Delaware River is just jammed with mud. You know, it's mud wherever you go. And there is some spots that have the milfoil that grow a sandy bottom to it. But a lot of times in like a place like the Delaware or the James River, let's say you go into a creek arm on the Delaware or on the James, and you'll get up there and there's going to be a feeder creek coming out. Okay, so on the Delaware where you have like a 8-mile-an-hour tide sometimes, you know, when it comes out of that creek arm, I'm saying a small creek arm, you know, as wide as a tent. When it comes out of that creek arm, what's it going to do? It's going to wash that mud, and it's going to keep that mud washed off. You can go down the bank, and you can try this for yourself to learn how it looks. Like turn your graph on, just regular 2D sonar, you know, drive across, you'll see real red like mud, bam, all of a sudden it's yellow. That's a sandy bottom. The fish will set up on that like crazy because of that hard bottom. It's something they can use. That is another point. So let's say you don't have a Navionics chart, okay, in your graph. You just have standard Lowrance or Garmin. Like when I go to the James River or any other river system, you can't really do it. You can do it in every bay, but they don't really seem to work as good. The Northeast Creek would be one, for example. Like if you were going up to the Northeast Creek coming out of Anchor and you're going, and you look at your graph, you kind of see something. If you don't have your Navionics on, you see something like this. It's a square, and it'll have like the creek shown like that. The only time you see that on a river system is if it's a natural feeder creek. If it's just a regular creek, you'll see a circle. Fish in the summertime will go to that creek. I mean, they won't even look at the other creeks. So Northeast Creek, for example, that's a natural feeder creek. I mean, anybody that drives into Anchor Marine from Northeast, you see the creek coming there, right? That's naturally being fed. So what does that do in the summertime? cooler. It's got a lot more oxygen. You know, during the summer, like June, you know, July, August, that's when you start getting depletion of oxygen in the water. That's why, you know, during the summertime, Northeast Creek, not only because of all the least fish, but that's why it really shines that time of year. It's cooler. You can drive there and you can see the difference. I mean, big time. I mean, it's like 5 degrees different sometimes. So, you know, looking for stuff like that, natural feeder creeks on the river system, especially the James, is pretty key. And I'll take them things as far as I can possibly go till I run out of water or I get stuck in my boat. That's just how I do it. I mean, it's usually virgin water up there. You can usually go up there and it's crystal clear because it's a natural feeder creek, and you can visually see every fish before you catch it. And that's just how it is. So with the Delaware, you know, try to look at areas that you know the water is coming out harder than normal. Okay. On the Delaware, and especially the river that I live on back at home, you know, it sets up with like submerged outfall pipes, or it has, you know, factory runoffs or just street runoff pipes that are blowing water into a river system. Whenever you can find moving water on moving water, I don't think it gets any better. There's a couple things that it does. During the early years, like during the early of the season, like March, April, if you got moving water coming from a street or coming from a back pond, what's it going to be? It's going to be warmer. The fish relate to that like crazy. The one on my river back home, all the fish in the wintertime are right in front of this pipe. They're just all sitting in front of the pipe. A lot of times when we've got pipes blowing in like that, it's going to make a big depression right in the bottom. So after the depression's made, the fish sit in this hole and the water's blowing over their head. That's all it's doing. Pipes at any tide is really good. If you got a pipe that lays in the water at low tide, it's even better because the water coming out behind it actually makes a huge eddy, and the fish can just sit in there with no effort whatsoever. So it's a pretty cool deal. Yeah. Sorry, you got a question?
I have a question for you. For fishing the flats, it's in the summertime, it's June, July, August, grass is up.
Yep.
You got an outgoing tide. You know how you have little channels that run through there.
Yeah, shipping those, yep.
You know, they're not too deep.
Yeah, it's very shallow.
Very shallow.
6 foot.
Are you positioning your boat in that channel
At low tide, yes.
and going through the grass?
Right to the edges. You know, there was one particular channel this spring and summer, early summer this year, that I'd say probably 9 tournaments in a row were won out of one channel, because that was the first original area to grow grass this year, and the fish are late into that channel because a couple of reasons. If it got cold or something in the spring, they're going to back off and go into this. If they're spawning, what do they want after they spawn? Deep water for post spawn. And you know, the good thing about the flat, the fish don't have to leave once the grass grows. If there's grass out there right now, as warm as it's been, there's fish in the flat still. They ain't leaving. Everybody gets this thing in their head, oh, September, October, oh, there's no fish in the flat. I'll tell you something, that's where all the big bags come from in September, October, is on the flat. So, don't ever let anybody try to get in your head on that, because that ain't the truth either. So, any more questions, guys? Yes?
Using the same drop shot on the Delaware too?
Yes. Well, the Delaware, sometimes I go to 5/8 because of the current in there.
But you're using an exposed hook.
Correct.
Yeah.
Even in the round of wood too? The
Yep.
trees?
Yep. I don't really have a problem with it, to be honest with you. Yeah. The Delaware seems like, I would say, my #1 bait in the Delaware is a spinner bait. Chartreuse, big gold willow blades. I mean, every tournament I ever won there, that's what I went along. Jig wise, I mean, a bitsy flip, a striking bitsy flip, a little 4 ounce jig with a little zoom sort of throw in the back, black blue, is probably the best jig you're going to use on any river system, because most of your crayfish fishing and forage is about that size. So small and compact is key. Yes?
Is there any time on a drop shot you use a weed guard on that hook?
If I'm in the grass, I mean, if I'm in thick vegetation, I'll Texas rig it. That's the only change if I do.
Other than that, it's open hook.
Other than that, it's always.
Even in the trees.
Yep.
Can you do the grade 15 to 10? Can you do that in all your upper bay, all your James, and all the dirty water?
All river systems correct. Yeah, I had it rigged up right there actually, with no worm on it, but I got it rigged up.
Secret worm.
Next slide.
No problem. Any more questions, guys? Yes, sir.
what size drop shot? Look, when it first came out, they were using awfully small.
Two owner.
I
All of
use,
a sudden they got bigger.
yeah, I use the owner number 2 see, it depends too. If you're using a bigger drop shot bait, you can go down to a 1. You know, it just depends on pairing it with your bait. Yep. So, yes.
Say you get like a really strong north wind and it pushes all your water out of the upper bay.
Yep.
Or you get a super high tide. What kind of things are you looking for? Are you extreme tides?
Well, you know, there's a difference on that. Going to a newer body of water, it's a little bit tougher because I don't know the areas. But on the upper bay, there's docks on the northeast that I will only hit on the flood tides because it seems like, you know, the fish gravitate to this certain dock because at normal water heights, they can't even get to it. Now, on a blowout tide, see, I think a blowout tide is probably one of the hardest tides to fish on the upper bay. And I'm sure maybe some of you guys will agree with me. You know, one good thing about the northeast and all the areas around it is there's a lot of marinas. You know, a lot of the areas the fish would stay on normally recede to them deeper areas. So, plus, you know, using structure scan, driving around a lot and marking a lot of covers is a big advantage too. Any more questions, guys? Well, thank you for coming out, guys.